Yeah, hi everyone. I've only been here a few times before, and I thought I'd apologise every time I've left early, which isn't a statement about the social quality. I've got a young kid and I wake at 4 AM to work, so there we are. Yeah, I'm here to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, which is using AI, because it seems like everyone is using AI, to create learning video content. So just so you know, I suppose I'm not a fraud. You can check this out. I used to be a lecturer in mathematics at the University of Kent. That's where I did my degree and my PhD. And what would you know, with very good fortune, the maths that I used to lecture in just so happens to be the maths that AI is written in. That wasn't planned, but man, does life work out sometimes. I'm currently the Director of Curriculum for Level 3 data programs for a company called Condell, which means I write all of their content, a large amount of that being videos. And as far as I know, along with my colleague Leanne Howard-Dace, was the first person to write an adult level program fully using AI. That again was slightly, slightly good fortune. Because when we got the nod to write the program, that was just after ChatGPT had hit the headlines. So it's like, whoa, we're going to use that then, and we're going to figure that all out. So that's enough of the background. I'll give you a brief bit of the plan. So what is the plan? Roughly 3 stages. I don't yet know how long I'm going to be talking, so I might cut it short, I might waffle at the end, or we might just have a really long Q&A. We will see. It's 3 bits: stuff AI can do, which is a lot, a bit on pedagogy, ultimately, and creating quality resources, because again, that's something I really care about, and then finally bringing it all together, engineering quality video content using modern AI tools. So, please do just interject with questions, by the way. This will be relatively freeform. Stuff AI can do. Given the audience, I'm not going to belabor the point because we know a lot of this. I'm going to talk about AI in the way that it applies to a non-technical audience, the way that most people would seek to use it, which is to say, you can just get into this right away, right? Anyone can. I know plenty of people who don't even particularly like computers and who have got on with ChatGPT just fine. You know, they've used it for stuff, sometimes pointless, sometimes with purpose. But it's there, right? You can just open up the browser or Claude or Bard or whatever you want and just get going. And you can get good stuff out of it if you use it well. I was just having a conversation just earlier with Frank. You can use the free model, ChatGPT, providing your use cases aren't too advanced. That will give you good stuff. And if you want to pay for it, £20 a month is not a harsh rate to be paying for the usage that you can get out of these models. And they're probably only going to get cheaper and cheaper. One of the keys, and this is probably the main relevant point to what I'll be showing you, is modern text-to-speech is really good, right? To the point where you could literally clone a voice from 60 seconds of audio and have them say anything back in return. I don't know if anyone heard the Keir Starmer deepfakes, where he's effing and jeffing at his team, or the one that came out today about Lindsay Hoyle. But apparently massively apologising for everything he'd done wrong and so on and so forth. But this stuff is perhaps the more nefarious side of text-to-speech, but either way, you know, these engines are quality and they're relatively cheap to use. Has anyone heard of 11 Labs? It's definitely the front runner here, well worth checking out. It's great. One of the reasons I like AI is I'm ageing, you know, that's inescapable, and I'm just running out of imagination. And each year it just feels like that tiny bit less potent in that sense. Not AI, right? This never runs out of ideas. Any time of day you want it to give you some information, give me it and it will just go, yeah. You want it to give you 100 pieces of information about a certain thing, it just goes, no problem. They might not be good, don't get me wrong, but it will give you ideas. And if you're looking to use AI as part of a creative process, which is when you're creating content, that is how I'm using it, sometimes just unblocking the pipeline, AI is perfect for. You know, help me out here, I need something, give me some suggestions and I'll pick. You know, that type of thing, I find it really, really useful for that. And if you're willing to hold hands with a virtual machine, then you can, with AI, achieve very good things. So, that's the good stuff, followed by the not so good stuff. Slightly out of sync animations, but you know, there we are. Yeah, it doesn't have an imagination, obviously, but it can come up with some quite odd stuff. When I was writing the data course that I referred to earlier, one of the criteria was that each lesson, let's call them, would have a quote from a man and a woman who are currently active in the tech sector that was relevant to that lesson. And so a lot of the time it pulled out real people with real quotes that were relevant. One of the times ChatGPT said that the quote from a woman who was currently working in the tech sector could be attributed to Nelson Mandela. And it did not back down. So that is, I've got the prompt and the transcript, that is 100% legit. No actual definition of truth, so you've probably heard before, large language models like ChatGPT, they're just predicting the next word or what could be the next word, you know, what's likely to be. It will get multiplication wrong. If you put 3 or 4 digit numbers in and ask it to multiply, it might get the first and last digit, because mathematically you can predict those fairly easily. But it will get it wrong. It will. Yeah, so there's no underlying intellect here. It's a pattern recognition tool that is convincing and might frequently comes across as more evidence-based or factually informed than it is. One of the other downsides, downside, upside, is it is literally a black box, right? So something like ChatGPT, which is trained on the entirety of the internet up until, some point in 2022, it's a lot of information, it's a hell of an amount of information. How do you know what's going on in the innards of it? You simply don't. Okay, even with relatively rudimentary AI tools, you just don't know what's going on in there. You can make them deterministic, so you can, there's a hyperparameter called the temperature, which you can set so that you always get the same answer back if you always put the same information in. I don't view that as a strength of the system. I have never actually used it that way. So, anyway, some upsides, some downsides, very popular, everyone wants to use it or at least tried using it, students typically. Is anyone working as a lecturer or someone who marks work? Yeah, have you had AI essays coming in? Yeah. Hard to tell. A giveaway of using ChatGPT is Americanized spelling. I don't know, I've seen that a lot. The use of the word leverage for basically everything. Like there are certain traits in there which you do. Yeah. Okay. So the upsides and downsides, right? So it's about how do you take what can be a very powerful tool, set of tools, and make them so that they are part of an efficient workflow, interacting with the human, where the human is always the master overall. Okay, so never handing over full control to AI. So in a moment I'm going to show you some videos, and I'm going to apologise. Actually, probably this audience is fairly good for it, but does anyone actually like maths? Oh mate, that's better than the average classroom, so we'll take that. Yeah, awesome. It's a maths video. There we go, I said it. It's not meant to be a quality maths video, because I've been out of the teaching game for quite some time, and I never taught this. Any other ways I can adjust your expectations? Probably not. Oh, one more. The first video is not meant to be the good part. Okay, so.
Is this the one you showed me?
No, it's a new one I did.
Welcome to this video about the sum of angles within a triangle. Please speak with your teacher if you'd like any support. Here we have a regular triangle. It isn't equilateral isosceles or right angle. We're interested in the angles of the triangle, so let's label each of them with the following letters. We don't have to use the letters A, B and C. Any letters will do. And sometimes we'd use Greek letters instead, like alpha, beta and gamma. We can write this as a formula where A plus B plus C equals to 180 degrees. This is perhaps the most famous formula about triangles, so we should make sure that we've committed it to memory.
Don't worry, that's it for the maths. So that was actually created in PowerPoint, by the way, and then put into a video. Did anyone twig, please be honest, that was an AI voice? Completely AI. Since minor giveaways, right? When you've got the ear for it and you've listened to enough stuff, you can pick them out. Some signs are, often words come out a bit more American for some reason than English. So again, little things like that. But that's an off-the-shelf voice with 11 labs, which you could go and use on the website now. Okay, so that's one example. The purpose of that video is I authored that video. That hopefully obviously wasn't my voice. That was a generated voice, but I did the original writing on the screen and the arranging stuff like any educator would. All of the other stuff which I'm about to show you follows, and it follows in a fully automated way, and I'll just get to it. So here's the same video of a character that we've developed called Slightly Disenfranchised Teacher.
Welcome to this video about the sum of angles within a triangle. Please speak with your teacher if you'd like any support. Here we have a good old-fashioned triangle. We think you'll agree that there's nothing special about it at all. We're interested in the angles of the triangle, so let's label each of them with the following letters. We don't have to use the letters A, B and C, but I'm not feeling very imaginative today, so this will have to do. We can write this as a formula, where A plus B plus C equals to 180 degrees. This is perhaps the most famous formula about...
The people I work with have banned me from showing Extremely Disenfranchised Teacher, because she really is not happy with life. So there's an underlying methodology which, time permitting, I'll get to, but that was a fully AI-generated video from the initial video. Voice, words, everything. If you want a bit of Shakespeare in your maths life.
Welcome, gentle viewers, to this video frame for knowledge of the total angles within the triangle's lines. Listen well and let not your mind wander, for this knowledge shall make your understanding fonder. Hark! Behold a three-sided shape of olden time and simple make. We do declare 'tis nothing grand, no unique feature to expand. To comprehend this shape in its entirety.
Shakespeare likes the sound of his own voice. But again, yeah, there's obviously some technique to this. It's not just something which you press a button and happens. But the general premise is altering parts of the various elements within the video in a very structured guardrail way, so I'll explain a little later. And that applies as well as to voices, to characters, to languages. So here's me, speaking Italian.
Benvenuti a questo video sulla somma dei angoli all'interno di un triangolo. Parla pure con il tuo insegnante se hai bisogno di supporto. Ti abbiamo un buon triangolo vecchio stile.
I know the pronunciation's a little off. So basically, the general idea is you create a video with a particular method, and then you can do an awful lot more than this. These are just some sort of funny examples. But it means potentially you create one video in your chosen language, and then providing you've done it well, you press a button and you get all of the major world languages for no extra effort and for pretty cheap overall. Like, it's about 15p a minute of audio roughly to do. So if you're willing to take that on the chin, there you are. So yeah, that's what can be done. And I just want to talk about, as an educator, sorry, I've got to really, some of the principles which are underpinning this. So, designing educational material, I'm not going to go so far as saying it's a science, because it isn't. It's probably somewhere between that and an art. But there are theories, pedagogical theories, about how you design learning materials so that they're easiest to be understood by students. And one of the main ones, one of the most popular ones, the one that I personally subscribe to, is cognitive load theory. And it basically says, if you minimise the number of distractions, and the many forms that those distractions can take, you maximise the opportunity for learning. So if you're preoccupying a learner with unnecessary information, or you're interrupting their flow or their engagement or whatever, then you risk that the learning process will stop. And with modern generations, that's a particularly difficult game, because retaining the attention of young people is hard. I mean, it was hard 10 years ago when I was doing it, let alone with phones being as prevalent as they are now. So some of the ideas, it's well worth reading, cognitive load theory. It's basically summarised as follows. there are 5 principles to it. One is the absolute bare minimum visual information you can get away with. So don't just be writing stuff on slides. Hello. I feel like I've just been born. So the coherence principle is, yeah, don't write more than what you need. And this will play into the AI stuff, as I'll explain a little bit later. Second, highlight key information visually. So in maths terms, number your equations with a different colour, underline things, highlight things, point people visually to where the key stuff is. Never, you know what, redundancy, don't read what is written. That is seen as being very bad practice, because if you're trying to give people the same information 2 ways, it's actually worse. So the idea is you don't conflict what is seen by trying to overlay that with what is heard. 2 more, and it gets a little bit unnecessarily wordy. Spatial contiguity, put the relevant stuff next to each other. So if you're giving 3 equations that correspond to 3 graphs, you wouldn't just say the 3 equations and then put the 3 graphs somewhere. You'd have each equation above the graph, or something of that form. So basically, in a spatial sense, group up the relevant stuff together. And then finally, if you're talking to stuff that happens over the course of time, make things happen in the correct sequence. So if you are saying, now I'm highlighting this, that has to happen at the same time as actually doing it, right? So whereas if you are highlighting something on the screen and then 5 seconds later you've said, now we highlight this thing in green, that's just like, nah, like obviously jarring. So those are the 5 principles, cognitive load theory, like I say, not a science, but good guiding principles if you are designing lesson resources. The problem is that if you take a video and you are looking to transform it somehow, voice, language, whatever you're doing, and you're putting that in the hands of AI and just saying, do your thing, well, you're going to get probably a very different video out of it if you just try and press go. That's the risk with AI, right? You give it insufficient instruction, you allow it too much breathing room, and it comes up with all sorts of business. Especially if you're thinking about, for example, syncing a video with what happens with what is said. So again, you want things happening concurrently, because that is the way to reduce the cognitive load and to maximize the learning. So if you let AI just modify part of the video and modify part of the audio, there's a really good chance you've broken that link, and so you've skewed things. If you're flowing this through a little black box, again, risk is there, but if you're flowing this through a massive black box and you're using some LLM or whatever it is you're using to transform it, big time risk that what you get out at the end is just nonsense. And okay, maybe OpenAI's Sora changes this, I don't know. I personally suspect not. But the idea of being at the mercy of the machine just to take one type of video or one type of learning content and to turn it into another is a real risk, especially if you don't know how to gauge the output. So rough colour coding, very, very rough of the risks. If you're creating, let's just talk about video resources, and you're going to use AI to transform them one way or another, there are certain things which aren't risky, like coherence and spatial contiguity. So you can just say, we'll always keep the video component the same, for example. So if the original video looks nice, then the output video is not going to have changed. So they're not really a risk. Signalling, redundancy, and especially, like I said, syncing things in time is big time risk, And the more breathing room, like I said, you give AI, the more things that in likelihood are going to go wrong. Just because, throw some more things in there, AI just will do some weird stuff, right? So the more latitude you give it to do that weird stuff, the more you'll see it. And although the services are cheap, if you're using them wastefully, or not in a way which is meant to minimize the cost, it can escalate, especially if you get a bit trigger happy, as I did with the generate button, and then look at the bill afterwards. Okay, it's like, oh, that's several £100. So, just some of those risks. So what's the plan? How long have we got? Yeah, that's going to work nicely. Cool. So, engineering high-quality educational content. It doesn't actually have to be educational content. It can be any video content, really. The same methods apply, but just since this is my passion. A few of the techniques that Leanne and I and some of my collaborators came up with, which we haven't named very well, sorry. Guardrailing is the general principle behind this, and I'll give some examples of what I mean by that. But overall, like I said, the human is in charge. They control the output and they judge the output. But one of the key things, perhaps the most key thing, is feeding AI with the quality ingredients. Garbage in, garbage out, right? That applies across data analysis. I found it to apply especially with AI. Because if you just go gung-ho into ChatGPT and say, I want this thing, or whatever, I don't really know what I want, you're going to get back something generic and not really that useful. Whereas if you can give it really good structured information to work from, such as a really high quality video or something like that, you're going to get much more out of it at the end. So the human AI, human sandwich. From creation to curation, that's a phrase from my mate Pete. He hit upon the idea, which I explained earlier, that is if you're stuck for a good idea, get AI to generate as many as you want and then use your own eyes to pick it. So logos, really great if you use Canva or one of those text to image tools. Give me 50 logos that roughly describe this. I like that one. That's so much quicker as a methodology than trying to design it yourself, especially if you have no design skills. So it really puts the human as the judge rather than the creator of the material. And then never be at the mercy of the system, but allow it to be operated in a fully automated way if you want, as well as full quality assurance if that's what you want as well. So as a general idea, I think we're good. Let's say you have a video and you want to transform it into another video, but you want to be very controlled about how you do that. Well, again, if you just press go, let AI do its thing, you're not going to get out probably something of quality. Whereas if you restrict the flow of information, or you provide a structure to that video in advance, you can then give it very little room for manoeuvre. So if you had some abstract flow of information, like is shown here, you certainly wouldn't start putting black boxes at the beginning, right? Because you potentially then just change everything which proliferates through towards the end. You certainly don't put it at the end, because then all of your hard work can just get blown up into nothingness and meaningless information. So start, end, out of the question. But what you can do, with a bit of skill and practice, is just find clever little places to put dials and knobs and things like that, where you do allow an element of control and customization, but in this very guardrailed way. So let's give a very whirlwind tour. The basic idea behind all of this is to divide a video or any educational material into a series of events. And rather than try to explicitly link those events, so rather than say in event N, in the next event we do this or whatever, rather than trying to branch out either side, which is a very natural instinct for an educator, by the way, to not. Because what happens if you change some part of the video of event N? Does that still feed into event N+1? What if you've got a fundamentally different example here that you've switched in or switched out? Does the next bit then make sense? If you've tried to link them together, there's a risk there that then gets polluted. So the key is actually to never explicitly link two subsequent events, but to allow the humans to do the things they do best, which is to fill in the gaps themselves. So to provide information in an obviously structured way, but to never explicitly link, allowing you to switch parts in and to switch parts out. So you can get away with an awful lot, by the way, if you do this. You can actually remove whole steps, and people would never know very often. We've done that before, just take a chunk out of a video, providing you've never explicitly linked left to right in the steps, you wouldn't know. Things get really cool, and this will be my end point, when you decouple what happens on the screen to the audio which is generated. So, for example, if you wanted to have a piece of video which is, relatively speaking, always static, so just a base video, which is always your underlying ingredients, you can then change what is said over the top of it a lot. And providing it's never jarring, providing things still sync up, etc. Language, one to the other, fine. Character, one to the other, fine. Slightly more verbose, fine. You know, happier, sadder, whatever. Because you've given yourself the breathing room of never having to explicitly link step to step, and because you've separated the audio from the video. So, sort of slightly anticlimactic, but there's that icon in the middle to show the final bit that I forgot to say. So the overall premise is relying on humans to fill in the gaps. And if you ever watch a piece of reality TV, not that I'm encouraging that, but if you were to, have a look at how much one scene actually links to the next, or one shot links to the next, because very often they don't. They don't at all. Yeah, it's clearly like two different scenes merged together by the editor, and your brain just goes, that's one scene, because the music's consistent, or you know, the voices are still the same. But every now and then you hear a voice on a different mic, because it was said on a different day or across the room or whatever. The brain just goes, yeah, fine, whatever. You know, you've not done anything which jars with me, so I accept this as a consistent narrative. That, without going into the full details, because I, for a start, don't have time, is the underlying principle. So I think I'll leave it there, Alex, if it's all right, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Right, I get to go first, sorry guys. So it's kind of like, this is more about the whole thing, so obviously I know exactly what you've been working on. I was just thinking, so my mum was a teacher, and I remember during lockdown her having to do lessons online. I was just kind of curious, is that kind of the aim of what you're creating? Could that have been used in lockdown, so you know, to give, be able to teach online? Is that sort of thing that you were kind of hoping you could use this for, or are there other applications of it?
It will be twofold. One will be, as you say, to write material that could be used in a remote teaching situation. I more so imagine, you know, here's a video, watch it, rather than necessarily trying to do it live. By doing the decoupling that I mentioned, it actually is way quicker to write a video than trying to do it all in one. Because if you try and one take a screen cap video, you're doing a lot of retakes. And you're saying and and you're cursing yourself, and you're going out for a lot of walks, and you're questioning a lot of life decisions. That is a deeply frustrating experience, because as an educator, you want to get it right? So yeah, it's actually much quicker for teachers. However, I do think there's another application, which is to take resources that already exist, especially those in PowerPoint, and to have a teacher teach that live, so using the PowerPoint as many teachers do, and to actually speech to text what they say as they say it, and then to summarise that with ChatGPT and to have it played back over the slides as like a recap of the lesson. And that's actually way easier to do than the stuff that I showed you here. So yeah, I think twofold.
Yeah. So now I've got another question based on that. So most of you probably know, but I'm doing a degree online, and I was just sort of curious, is that the sort of thing how my course works is we get loads of slides. There's no speaking, it's just a bunch of lecture slides, but it's all in English, because it's an English school. But I'm wondering, is that another application? Could it be that running an online course, you could create this, and you could actually have voiceovers in different languages, so people maybe that aren't speaking English would be able to use?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's probably the main one.
Yeah.
There are some quirks to that, and that actually comes back to the coherence principle of cognitive flow theory that I mentioned. If you are putting out visual resources and they're written in English, and then the language is Italian, again, a bit jarring, right? So that's why you minimise the amount of written information on the page as much as possible.
Okay. So you have to get multiple versions. You have to get the PowerPoint to also be. Yes,
yes, exactly that. But APIs exist to change PowerPoints. We've done that. Take this piece of text on this page, change it to whatever. So that's all really doable and actually quite easy.
I'm done now.
Sweet. Yes.
So on ChatGPT, are you sharing that as like on a document on the back of like, so it's got access to the PowerPoints, or how are you doing that? Because it's like different engines, isn't there, for different activities that you could do on that?
One of the things we were very mindful of is that AI being, in a popular sense, being relatively embryonic, is there are going to be lots of services that come and go. And there will be services that are better than than ChatGPT and that are better than 11 Labs. I have no doubt of that.
Yeah.
So our system uses whatever is best at the time. So it's APIs into large language models and text-to-speech generators. And as soon as something comes along that's better than, cheaper than 11 Labs, we'll switch it out. Same with ChatGPT, it will just be merciless capitalism. Really? Yes, sorry, there was one question, yeah.
It sounds like we're talking about creating a system to make it easier to use these tools in this way. Or are you also saying, hey, anyone can do this, but you maybe need a few technical skills, or do you just need to know how to use ChatGPT and text-to-speech?
You could do it in a kind of manual sense, as I think you're describing, where you do the legwork. We've created an interface that we're using in-house, and we're currently making a web version of it. In fact, I saw it today. It's awesome. Our web developer, Rin, she's great. Yes, so the idea is it would be something you hand to people to do all of the behind-the-scenes work. It doesn't have to be fed by PowerPoint, actually. I should just say it can be any input video. It can take a video that exists, make it fit our methodology, and then do the AI stuff with it. So
will you sell it to Alex's professors, teachers, sorry, so they can create easy courses at a fraction of the cost?
Yeah, I mean, we're not in it to make huge amounts of money. I think selling it would be very cheap selling it. It would be like, give us £1 and pay your own API costs, sort of thing. And, you know, maybe pay us for some training. So, yes, the aim is definitely to have as many people using it, as educators using it as possible. And we're probably going to open source the IP and the methodology as well. We haven't decided on that. There's two aspects to it. There's the system, which can be turned into an interface and used very easily. And then there's actually working within that system and designing resources for it to be used optimally. So to do things like ensuring the syncing, for example, if you take English language and turn it into Shakespeare, like you've got to have a way of making sure that that syncs, because you know sometimes Shakespeare switches the order of words or whatever. People would figure that out for themselves, definitely, but we've done a lot of that experimentation, and we can tell people an awful lot of shortcuts, you know, just do it this way, basically. Sorry. Yes, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of relates to what I was wondering is, when you've done translations on it, I guess you still need somebody who speaks that language to double check it, because,
yes.
Yeah, strange things come out.
Oh, yeah.
But also order, like, Italian and English aren't that different in order, but things like Hindi and Mandarin, things where there's vast differences in just the layout of sentences. Have you experimented with sort of doing it to, like, sort of outside the European language base, and how well it actually translates?
Yes, so my best friend Nipin speaks Hindi, and he was the first person that I went to test, let's say, non-European languages. There is a threshold, definitely. If you took 1,000 words of English and turned it into 1,000 words of Hindi, that's going to be jumbled, right? And the more you try and animate on the screen to sync with that, the more traps you've laid for yourself, ultimately. So there's a safety-first approach, which is don't animate anything. And, you know, a lot of PowerPoint slides are just bullet points and pictures and things, in which case, great, because that works. If you're going to go the animation route, especially something like maths, which is typically handwritten, then that's when how you create video changes slightly. So you have to engineer it. That's why I call it engineering. You have to engineer the output. You have to be mindful of the language being used as well. Thank you. Yeah?
Have you put any kind of A/B testing for learning outcomes, so maybe with various events or anything like that?
We're about to do this because we are about to start releasing our massive tranche of social media videos. Shakespeare does maths, for example. How to speak maths, etc. And we're doing the variant. Yeah. In fact, again, merciless capitalism, that will be how we decide which characters get tried out more, which languages come out more as well, and that will be on hits and retention, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well done. It seems like quite a long journey ahead of you guys anyway, because I've played a little bit with language models and obviously how that pans out with pixels and stuff with journeys and whatnot, and they cannot realize any fresh ideas or concepts that never been done before or inserted into the systems. You sort of have to travel all of those lessons, prepare them ahead for AI to then modify in any way.
Absolutely.
You like that, yeah, so that's perfect, yeah. But it looks like 80% of lecturers in this country will lose their jobs, and 100%
I've heard that. Well, one of the...
passionate about your thing, right? Yeah, everybody else who reads the slide book, basically, everyone else was lazy to do that.
I mean it very sincerely when I say that the higher quality of input, the more you get out of it, and the social media videos will actually always credit the original author, and we're hoping teachers will contribute. You know, those lessons they always wanted to share but didn't want to put their face to, kind of thing. But I've heard that several times, we won't need teachers anymore, but it needs teachers feeding this in the first place. You've seen what happens if I try and do it, not being a teacher. Yeah, we actually, as part of the workflow pipeline we've got at the moment, several teachers are testing it out, you know, just to make sure that it is as it seems, and yeah, so far it is. Yes?
What I would suggested, there's a great potential in A/B testing. For example, we can use generative AI for a specific lesson to create 2 or 3 specific sets of exercises in real time and present it to the audience and check their understanding of this and see which one of the exercises actually works better to help the audience get the subject better. So I think if we can do it in real time, that would be really nice to do.
Yeah, actually, what a moment of serendipity. I was speaking with the web developer Rin today, who is going to take the most time-intensive part of compiling a video, which is compiling the video rather than generating the audio, so that it can be done faster than real time. It is actually at the moment real time on my laptop, but yeah, this is going to go up into the cloud where it does all of those wonderful things, and yeah, then it will be 10 seconds. Here's a 3-minute video.
How many more questions do we have?
Yeah, sorry.
Anyone wants to ask questions, sir? I just want to check one. Anyone else? I think it was sorry, we have overrun a bit. So yeah, last question, sorry.
Yeah, well, just wanting to know what's the best way to learn more about this stuff? Like with AI, how to use it properly. Because I've seen a lot of stuff online and I don't know what to look at.
Yeah, well, there's been an awful lot of people trying to make a fast buck out of developing resources around how to use AI, and most of them I think are very poor quality. I think if you're looking to get a foothold in it, is to not worry about the coding to start with, but to have a task in mind. The first one I did actually was trying to get AI to write something like a 2-minute script for a podcast that I was a big fan of. You know, and of course, because I was a big fan of it, I was then like, that's not quite right, you know, that wouldn't typically happen this way, etc. And to try and coerce it into doing the thing you want, and to see how far you can get. Because that gave me a very quick instinct, a very reliable instinct as to how I can push it. And I've done this with a few students as well, you know, see if you can try and achieve something creative with this and find out where the limitations are. Then if the coding, you know, if you find you've got the knack for it, you may as well use ChatGPT to just generate some Python code to get going. And then automate the production of a script, change the voices, all that type of thing. Yeah, man, it's pretty fun when you get in, but I wouldn't do too much coding.
Right, I guess I'll stop there.
Sorry.
Thank you.